My name is Clara, and I am 32 years old. I have been married to Evan for 6 years, and for the most part, our life together has been peaceful. Evan is a good man, kind, patient, and always thoughtful. He takes care of me in every way he knows how. Whenever I fall sick, he is there, making sure I have everything I need. He never raises his voice, never gets angry, and never makes me feel like I am alone in this marriage. But despite all of this, something inside me has begun to shift. At first, it was just a passing thought, something small and fleeting, but as time went on, it grew into something heavier, a quiet, persistent discontent. Evan works long hours in construction, often coming home exhausted. He earns $2,500 a month, which is enough to keep us stable but not enough to give us more. I work as a financial analyst, making $6,000 a month, and yet, I still feel like we are constantly falling behind. I see the lives other women have, women whose husbands run their own businesses, who bring home large paychecks, who buy their wives expensive gifts, and take them on vacations to beautiful places. I tell myself I should not compare, that Evan is a good husband, that he loves me. But the thought lingers, why isn't he more ambitious? Our home is small but comfortable. Our car is old but reliable. I once thought these things didn't matter, but now I find myself noticing every little flaw. The furniture that needs replacing, the chipped paint on the walls, the vacations we never take. Love should be enough. I tell myself this over and over, but deep inside, I wonder if it really is. I believe that money can bring happiness, that it can give us the life we deserve. What I don't realize yet is that in my search for more, I may lose what truly matters most. The frustration inside me grew heavier with each passing day. I wanted more, and I believed Evan could do more. I told him to think about starting a business, to look for better opportunities, to find a way to elevate our life beyond just getting by. But he would always respond the same way, with hesitation, with uncertainty, with the quiet admission that he didn't know how. His complacency frustrated me. Then, one evening, he came home later than usual. His face looked tired, but there was something different in his expression. For the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful. Maybe he had finally taken my words to heart. Maybe this was the start of the change I had been waiting for. The next morning, he was gone before the sun even rose. He returned home after sunset, his shoulders slumped, his hands rougher than usual. I could barely get a word out of him before he went straight to bed. Then, after several days of this, he finally told me. He had taken on a second job, working nights at a restaurant. It would add $1,500 more per month to our income. It wasn't much, but it was something. I felt relieved, even a little proud. Finally, we could have more. But soon, the reality of his decision began to sink in. Evan was never home. He woke up before I did and came home long after I had gone to bed. He barely ate, barely spoke, barely lived outside of work. The man who once filled our home with laughter and warmth became a ghost, silent and exhausted. I watched him slowly disappear into his work, his body growing weaker, his energy fading. He stopped joking around with me, stopped sitting down for dinner. The little moments that once made our life feel full began to vanish. Then, one evening, it happened. He walked into the kitchen, looking paler than I had ever seen him. His hands trembled as he reached for a glass of water. Before I could react, he collapsed onto the floor. In that moment, my mind raced with panic, but somewhere deep inside me, a question began to surface. Was this truly worth it? The hospital room was silent except for the steady beep of the monitor beside Evan's bed. His face was pale, his body still, his breath shallow. I had never seen him like this before, so fragile, so drained of the warmth that had always made me feel safe. The doctor's words kept playing in my mind, circling like a storm I couldn't escape. Severe exhaustion, prolonged stress. His body can't take much more. Guilt pressed down on me like a weight I couldn't shake off. This was my fault. I had pushed him, made him feel like he wasn't enough, convinced him that love alone wasn't enough. I had measured his worth by his paycheck, by the things he couldn't give me, instead of seeing the things he already had, the patience, the kindness, the unwavering love. I thought about all the times he came home, exhausted but still smiling for me, how he never complained, never argued, only listened when I told him we needed more. He had been trying to give me the life I wanted, even at the cost of his own health. And for what? A bigger house? A better car? The approval of people who didn't live our life? Sitting there, staring at him, I felt something shift inside me. I didn't want more anymore. I wanted what I had. I wanted the man who had always chosen me, who had always been there even when I failed to see his worth. I promised myself then that I would change. I would stop comparing, stop measuring happiness by what we lacked, and start appreciating what we had. But just as I was ready to embrace this new mindset, life had one more lesson for me. It happened at a family gathering, just weeks after Evan had recovered. The room was filled with laughter, conversations blending together in the background. I had started feeling lighter, more at peace, until Evan's mother's voice cut through the noise like a blade. She didn't raise her voice, but there was disappointment laced in every word. She told me I should be grateful to have a hard-working husband. That many women would envy a man like Evan, kind, dependable, devoted. She reminded me that a wife's duty was to support her husband, not push him beyond his limits, not make him feel like he had to compete with men who had nothing but money. The room fell silent. Eyes turned toward me. I felt exposed, ashamed, and guilty in a way I never had before. I had spent so much time trying to prove something to people who never even lived my life, but standing there with everything was never about them. The truth was, I had been fighting myself all along. In the weeks that followed, something inside me began to shift. The weight of my own expectations, the silent comparisons, the longing for more, they all started to fade as I looked at my life with new eyes. I noticed the small things that I had overlooked for years. The way Evan always made sure my coffee was ready in the morning, even when he barely had time for himself. The little notes he left on the fridge, simple words like, "Have a good day, love," or "Don't forget your umbrella." He had done these things for as long as I could remember, but I had never truly seen them before. I watched the way he came home, exhausted but never complaining, never blaming me for the extra hours he put in, never making me feel guilty for wanting a life that was just a little bit more. I saw the quiet sacrifices he had made, not with grand gestures or expensive gifts, but in the small, selfless acts that showed how much he cared. I had spent so long believing that happiness was something we had to chase, something that existed in bigger houses, in expensive vacations, in the kind of wealth that turned heads. But as I sat across from Evan one evening, watching him eat the simple dinner I had prepared, I realized that happiness had been here all along, in the quiet, in the love we had built, in the life we had created together. So I made a decision. I stopped comparing. I stopped looking at what we lacked and started appreciating what we had. Instead of scrolling through pictures of luxury vacations, I chose to spend time with Evan, really spend time with him. And when he fully recovered, I did something I should have done a long time ago. I told him he didn't need to prove anything anymore. For the first time in years, I truly believed it. Love wasn't something that needed to be earned. It was something that had always been there. Weeks passed, and with each day, I felt something change deep within me. The home I once saw as small now felt warm and safe, filled with memories of the life we had built together. The furniture, though not luxurious, carried the weight of countless conversations, of nights spent curled up beside Evan, of quiet mornings where love was expressed not in words, but in presence. The car, though old, was not just a means of transportation. It had taken us through storms and sunshine, through struggles and laughter. It had carried us to the hospital the night Evan collapsed, and it had brought him home again. I had spent so long wishing for something newer, shinier, better, without ever appreciating that what we had was already enough. I watched Evan more closely now, cherishing the small, unnoticed acts of love that I had once taken for granted. The way he instinctively reached for my hand when we walked side by side. The way he still looked at me like I was the best thing in his world, despite everything I had once made him feel. The way he always made sure I had a blanket if I fell asleep on the couch, or how he left me the last piece of food on the plate, even when he was still hungry. For years, I had believed that happiness was measured in wealth, in status, in the things money could buy. But happiness had never been about what we owned. It had always been about who we shared it with. I no longer compared Evan to other men, because I finally saw what I had failed to see before. He was irreplaceable, not because of what he could provide, but because of who he was, because of the way he loved me, with patience, with devotion, with a quiet strength that never asked for anything in return. I had spent so long wanting more without realizing I already had everything, and now I would never take it for granted again. Because true happiness isn't found in wealth or status. It's found in the love we cherish, in the moments we choose to hold close, in the people we refuse to take for granted. In today's world, it's easy to believe that happiness comes from financial success. Social media constantly showcases extravagant lifestyles, luxury homes, expensive vacations, and grand romantic gestures. Like Clara, many people fall into the trap of comparison, believing that a better life means having more. But the truth is, happiness is not found in material wealth. It's found in the small, everyday moments of love and connection. The lesson from Clara's story is clear. Appreciate what you have before it's too late. Instead of focusing on what is missing, focus on what is present. The people who love you, the moments of kindness, the simple joys of life. True love is not measured in money, but in devotion, in patience, and in the sacrifices made out of love. To apply this to your own life, stop comparing your journey to others. Appreciate the little things, a partner's small gestures, a shared meal, a moment of laughter. If you are always chasing more, you may miss the beauty of what you already have. Choose gratitude, nurture your relationships, and remember, love is the greatest wealth you will ever own. True wealth isn't in money, it's in love, in moments, in the people we cherish. If this story touched you, subscribe and be part of something meaningful. See you in the next story.